Hey everybody, AJ with REBEL44. I'm putting together some frames for the supers for this spring. Built some hives this weekend, some brood boxes, some supers for these frames to go in where the bees will have to build out the comb, and also some brood frames which will go into these deep boxes. So yeah, night job. Anyway, I was just listening to some Europeans speaking online about American Foulbrood and European Foulbrood and how it's identified in their hive, depending on which type it is, regardless of which type it is. They pour petrol on the bees, kill it, and then they incinerate the hives. And then it got me thinking about this new vaccine, that there's a bee vaccine that just came out a couple of months ago. The USDA approved it. And the commercial beekeepers are quite relieved because they're having 90% losses. And then I just got thinking about that. And let me back up. This will be my 5th year of bee stewardship. And so perhaps there's some things that I haven't fallen into or been confronted with, but by the grace of God, I haven't had any European Foulbrood or American Foulbrood issues. And even in my short time, I'm thinking, why is that? So American Foulbrood and European Foulbrood is a bacterial infection. And the big difference between that is the American Foulbrood, if the spores get into the honeycomb, the reason why the USDA wants them to incinerate them is because those spores can stay active and go dormant for over a decade. So a hive that may appear, some old comb that may appear to be good, the spores can actually reignite and cause death. And it's very spreadable. So they've come up with this bee vaccine. The European Foulbrood doesn't have a life that's that long for the spores, but it's still just as deadly. And you have to take action and kill your bees and sanitize your hives or burn them. So this vaccine is the dead virus that they place in the food of the nurse bees to feed the queen. And when the queen eats the food, it is set down into her ovaries, and every egg that she lays, that bee egg is vaccinated, which is most likely a worker bee or obviously a drone bee. And those bees are now vaccinated. So I was talking to a scientist out of Missouri with Sweetwater Labs, and we were talking about the flu virus for humans. And let's just assume that, you get the flu A vaccine, and there's an efficacy rate for that, an extended period of time that lasts. And I believe it was like a year, and you lose 30%, and then the next year you lose another 30%. So within 3 years, you're down 90% on that specific flu virus. And we all know there's all kinds of different flu viruses. So we're hoping that that's going to do something for the commercial beekeepers. But then I got thinking, why are they having 90% losses? How did we get to this point? And most of the bees in the United States are run by commercial beekeepers. I think it's around 80%. And what they do is they truck the bees down, for example, right now down to California to the almond pollination. I believe the United States gets 98% of their almonds from California. So these bees are trucked in by the tens of thousands of hives, and they're set up in apiaries, and they're let loose into these almond fields. And the bees intuitively want to pollinate. That's what their nature is, and collect nectar. But that's all they can pollinate. There's no clover, there's no dandelion, so monocrop. It's like you and I eating a hamburger for 3 months straight. We're probably going to get sick. So these bees are run down, overworked, forced to pollinate these almonds. And then they're packed up, and I'm not saying this in specific order, but then they go to the orange blossom, Florida, the southeast. And more monocrop, no clover, no dandelion, monocrop, monocrop, monocrop. And then they're shipped up to Maine to the wild blueberries to pollinate. And then to Yakima, Washington, to pollinate the apples. There's probably not a dandelion in one of those orchards over there because of all the insecticide and pesticides that they spray to kill everything but those trees. So these bees are getting sick. The monocrop, their amino acid profile is low. Their diet is off kilter. So what these commercial beekeepers have been forced to do is give them antibiotics, tons and tons of antibiotics. And I think that it's just killing their immune system. Now, this is just my opinion. I don't have a doctorate or degree from Cornell in master beekeeping. I'm just a guy up in Redmond, Washington that's connected with my bees and trying to listen to them to the best of my ability. And I'm well aware that we need pollination, especially when we have massive crops like that. But if you step back and think about it, there's a reason why these bees are getting sick. There's a reason why they're unhealthy. There's a reason why they're pumping them full of antibiotics and making them work overtime. So I look at my little apiary and, you know, the bees are stable. They don't have to go anywhere. They're not trucked around. And they get on these pollen flows and these nectar flows, and they're able to go after 100 different species of plants. So their amino acid profile is fuller. Their diet is fuller. I supplement their water with Himalayan sea salt just as one water source, and they devour it. I've been looking into and researching some mushroom modalities to put into it as well. I have been using spirulina sea algae patties, and they're devouring it. And the scientist that I spoke with out of Missouri with Sweetwater Labs, he thinks that the spirulina sea algae is top notch. Now, other bee scientists have studied it and said that it wasn't too good. So there's so many opinions out there, and I'm just a guy keeping 34 hives. But something's happening up here, and the bees aren't dying. And I'm vehement about treating them with oxalic acid vaporization. And they're going into winter with 150 pounds of resources. I mean, if I told a commercial beekeeper how much honey I harvested last year, they'd laugh at me and say I was doing something wrong. But I'm not in it for the honey. I'm not doing it to collect honey. I'm in it for the bees and to allow them to propagate and to be healthy and to live and have a home. And I think there's a difference. So it also made me start thinking about nectar flows. And Bob Beanie talks a lot about this. And there was an article I was reading about invertase and diastase activity in honey in the Czech province by L. Valoria Predal. And he talks about the hypopharyngenial glands and the glycoprotein origination of invertase. So there's, when bees go on a nectar flow, something happens. There's enzymes in their stomach. There's 3. The first one is invertase. So when they go and collect the nectar, they convert that nectar, which is primarily sucrose, they mix it with the enzyme invertase in their stomach, and that converts to fructose and dextrose. The reason why they do that is because it makes it more soluble. Sucrose is a very unsoluble, it doesn't hold many solids, and it allows it to be more storable. But there's more enzymes that the bees use. The next one is diastase. And diastase converts starch to sugar, and it also makes it more soluble, and it also allows it to be more storable. And the one that really caught my eye was the glucose oxidase. And that third enzyme that they mix with the sucrose nectar, the glucose oxidase creates gluconic acid. And in the presence of gluconic acid, the byproduct of that is hydrogen peroxide. Now, everybody knows what that is for, or what that does. So it's creating an antimicrobial, antibacterial environment. So these bees are going out on these nectar flows, and they're actually getting healthier because they're mixing all these enzymes, and they're making their sucrose nectar more soluble so that they can store it as honey. That glucose oxidase also drops the pH down to 3.9, which makes it very stable. And honey will store forever if they get it below 18 to 18.5% water. They cap it off and then it won't ferment. So their preferred food source is always going to be on a nectar flow, sucrose. But they can't store sucrose because it will go bad. So what they do is they mix these enzymes, and in the process of mixing those enzymes, the colony that suddenly may have some brood issues, maybe a touch of European Foulbrood, perhaps my hives had a touch of European Foulbrood or American Foulbrood. And with a nectar flow, these little things clear up because their immune system can handle it. And so that's just the big difference that I've been pondering and thinking about. Like, why is a little guy like me who has very little knowledge is having success up here with these bees up in the Pacific Northwest? And I think that has a lot to do with it. During a dearth, which is an easy way for me to remember it, is dead earth, when there's no nectar flow, no pollen, and we have pockets of that throughout the summer. After the blackberry flow in June and July, there's not a lot of clover up here. There's some fireweed, but you'll see that the bees will start getting a little feistier and want to rob each other out. So what I do is I simulate a nectar flow by using sucrose sugar mixed with well water. And it's a very thin mixture. And what that does is that's simulating a nectar flow. So they're able to continue to create those enzymes in their stomach and convert that sucrose into dextrose and fructose and make it into a more stable, more soluble product and store it if they need to. It does multiple things. It clears up different issues that the brood may have. It keeps them from robbing each other, and they seem to be much more gentle and happy because they're not as protective. And it gives them something to do throughout the summer when there is a dearth. So there's people out there that want to be Darwinian beekeepers, and they don't want to treat their hives. They never want to give them any type of supplemental feed. And what I'm learning is I think that there's benefits to supplemental feeding, and there's definitely benefits to doing some type of mite treatment, which I use oxalic acid vaporization, which I shared in another video. So things I said I would never do when I first started beekeeping, being a bee steward. And I learned very quickly that in order for my bees to stay healthy and happy, these are some of the necessary steps that I have to be involved in with these bees to make sure that they are healthy and happy. So I'm not on one side or the other with the vaccine. This is just what I'm doing up here, and they're showing me through the amazing honey that they provide and the health of these bees and the fact that all these bees are still alive in February. They're showing me that there's something going on up here in Redmond Ridge that is maybe something for all of us to learn. So that's it. Just was pondering some things, and I thought I would share. AJ with REBEL44. I'm going to get back to work, and can't wait for that maple flow. It's coming up in April. We'll see you soon.